Hey, what is up, everyone? This is Gary A. Swaby, and you're now watching or listening to the Powercast. And today we will be recapping Power Book 4 Force Season 2, Episode 2. And the title of the episode is Great Consequence. And today I am joined by Mr. Richard Bailey Jr. How are you doing today, Richard?
Doing good, Gary. What's up, listeners and viewers?
Yeah, what's up indeed? And I am also joined by Miss Dana Abercrombie. How are you, Dana?
I am doing wonderful. Excited to talk about Force. Excellent episode.
Yep, definitely an interesting episode. Some interesting things happen. First of all, it was good to see some of the people coming back to leave comments in the last episode, episode 1. We saw some familiar faces like Jeremiah, so that was cool. I understand that not everyone watches Force, and some people also will probably take some time before they actually watch the new season. They might wait until a few episodes come out, but it was cool to see some of the familiar faces again. So we really appreciate you guys for participating and commenting and everything. So friendly reminder, if you enjoy the recaps, please do hit the like button, leave your comments, let us know what you think of these episodes of Power, and also subscribe to the channel for more great content. And we also cover we cover video games, we cover other entertainment shows, so you can check out those channels too, the Koalition Entertainment and the Koalition Gaming. So make sure you check out those. But I won't delay too much. We'll get straight into our takeaways. And this is the segment where we each give our individual take on what happened in the episode. And then, right after that, we'll hop into our questions. Our questions and discussion segment where we we have a bit more of a back and forth about what happened. So this week it is actually Dana's turn to go first with her takeaways. So I can't wait to see what she has to say about this episode. So take it away, Dana.
Okay, so I will say this. Yeah, this show, how it's composed, is much better than last season in terms of opening it up to the land of Chicago and the city and making us feel like this is a lived in place in terms of with this episode, we're slowly being more introduced into territories, how Chicago is ran, and with great consequences. I feel that this could open the doors for more kind of people and conflict that we haven't seen before to step in. So, with that being said, I am actually was really pleased with how they set this episode up. I wanted to start with the fact that, you know, dad or Da, he doesn't have the money to pay Ireland back their fees for basically protecting him for which went down with the events of the last season. And now we have the opportunity where all of Ireland could come after him. And I find that to be fascinating, even though you may have stood behind someone for all these years, I really love you and I protect you and all of this stuff. It's interesting to see how all of that will go away. One, if someone feels crossed, and two, over money. It's always money that leads us to a person's downfall. No matter how high up they are, that is something that can lead to their downfall. And so with this sounds really interesting. And as a result, we see that he is trying to reconnect with his children. And I genuinely believe that he loves his kids. But right now it's coming across as, I need to save my own ass. And it's interesting to see whether or not his manipulation skills can work this time around now that the kids were previously burned in the other season. So I look forward to what's going to happen with that, and also with Claudia. She was always made to feel like an outsider simply because her gender, and this does tackle gender politics. Simply for being a woman, she can't have that seat at the table. And Vic at this moment should not be at anybody's table. He is a complete mess. And you would think, normally, rationally, well, this person can't come in. I have someone who knows how to run stuff and runs it very well and to be independent. He did find out about Dahlia in that whole situation. She's very independent. She is very smart. And this is someone who really wants the job and has stepped up multiple times to say, I am here for that position. But again, because of sexism, identity politics, whatever it is that he feels, he won't let her in simply because of her being a woman. And so that's really interesting that you ever heard the term you cut your nose off to spite your face? He in the return is just hurting himself solely because his daughter is a daughter. I find that to be very interesting. The biggest other thing that makes me look forward to what could happen is the fact that you have what was it? Miguel owes money. And everyone in this episode seems to owe money. That trickles to being this great consequence of your actions. And the fact that, it feels that, I wonder how that is. Everybody needs money. Jenard is paying what was it? How did it go? Jenard was playing Miguel with someone else's money. And so now we wonder what's going to happen with that. So this means that Jenard needs to step up more. What's going to happen with Diamond? The consequences of his actions from off season, where we have with the parole officer. Does this mean he's going to have to step? We've seen him have to step away sometimes. So I'm interested in seeing what is happening with that. And the parole officer is, he is one of those sticklers who's going to just be an annoying pain in our ass this whole season and pain in his ass this whole season. So I do find that to be interesting. Another thing that I did like is, even though Victor is a mess, it's refreshing to see someone go through that grief. I wonder, there was a scene that happened in the very beginning where Tommy and Vic was at the gravesite. I think it was Gloria's gravesite. And, he was saying basically, I've been there before. It's really interesting to see whether or not these two, now I'm not saying they have a shared bond, but if they'll have more of a connection, even though we know that, Tommy offered him a position. It was solely, money-based and self-centered. You could also argue it wasn't something out of I care for you. But it would be interesting to see how these two characters interact this season, especially with Victor being a complete mess. So I will say that was interesting. And another part that I found interesting was we had a drive-by, and it showed how innocent victims are, they're being killed behind someone else's actions. And we've seen multiple times, other shows that'll have drive-bys, but it never really kind of follows through on what's going on with the regular bystanders. And I find that to be really interesting. It was sad, but it's something that happens, unfortunately, too many times. So it's nice to see the consequences of their actions and how it affects regular people. So that would be kind of my big takeaways. Overall, for me, I'm trying to phrase this nicely. The dialogue is not working for me, and that is the biggest standout. The acting, great. There's nothing wrong with the acting. There's nothing wrong with the direction, set design, everything else, fine. The dialogue, to me, I wish would improve, because it just feels like none of these characters would really say some of these lines that are so kind of corny. It's at the clock. Then we have the one that's like basically with the Miguel sister, is like, I'm not that kind of girl. You would run away from me. So this is kind of like dialogue that we've heard 15,000 times before I'll gut you like a fish. So I do wish that they would step up with that because it was just a really glaring of how that was, and it kind of took me out of the scene. But other than that, I will say that it was interesting to see how everyone's actions have consequences, and I hope that the show follows up on that in other episodes.
Oh, very excellent takeaways there. And I actually agree with you on the dialogue because for me, I feel like there's moments where like I can see that they're trying to create an interesting dynamic, but it just falls flat just because of how the dialogue is worded and stuff. Like there's a lot of instances of that. Like at the top of the show, with the detective guy who we're supposed to know is kind of street smart, I guess. You know, he talks to Rich Chicken Wing, to get some information. But some of his dialogue just doesn't hit. And it's the same with the detectives and the investigation team. It's like, I don't know, sometimes it just kind of falls flat to me. It doesn't feel as authentic as regular Power does. So I think it is a dialogue problem. It just needs to be elevated a little bit, I think. But yeah, good takes, good observations overall with your takeaways. Go ahead. You had something else to add?
There was one more thing that was just really glared out. I don't know if this is a
Mhm.
negative or a positive or one of those, learning lessons. It was that scene with Vic in the liquor store. So bad. But still, Vic in that liquor store, and previously, Claudia is explaining how much he stinks, he smells, he hasn't washed in probably days. And then we go into the back room with the lovely lady of the night who gives him that job. And I'm like, this is how you get an STD, children? What was going on, and what was going on in here? So that just was one thing that was really glaring and stuck out to me. Like, he did not wash for days, and then she's in there with her mouth on body parts that I'm sure was not clean. So that just stuck out to me. That was just a really funny moment for probably the wrong reasons.
Yeah, that was just a real random scene overall. Like, like it was, I don't know, it was a bit weird. It was funny, but it was weird. Like, it just seemed random how everything just took place. But yeah, definitely agree with you. So yeah, great takeaways. We're gonna hear from Mr. Richard Bailey Jr. now. So Rich, when you're ready, hit us with your takeaways.
Yeah, so for Dana, excellent takeaways as always. Uh, my personal thoughts on this episode, I thought it was okay. It was entertaining. But as you both already stated, some stuff felt a little overstuffed. A lot of additional things we didn't necessarily need. And I will get into that. But I have three takeaways I'm going to get into. So let's just start right from there. First takeaway. I want to talk about Jenard in this episode. Obviously, Jenard is still having a lot of issues and struggling to control his organization. We did see at the beginning of the episode, he does tell the other two guys he works for that they should go after Tommy because he wants Tommy killed after what happened. And of course, as the episode progresses, Diamond eventually catches up with Jenard and tells him, don't do this. We're not trying to start a war. So when Jenard goes back and tells the guys, okay, the plan is off. Don't kill Tommy until I say it's time to kill Tommy. One of the guys gets very angry, and we find out later on the consequences of that, which I will get into soon. But pretty much, Jenard, this whole time, this guy that is working for Jenard is also somebody that goes to the gym and talks to Shanti. So Shanti, who we know is Jenard's love interest, she obviously is also in a situation where she's always backing him. She does give him money at the end of this episode because the money that, because Jenard owes Merkovich and he also owes Miguel. And what ends up happening is he actually gives Merkovich the money he was supposed to give Miguel. So what we essentially find out is Jenard, obviously, he's having a hard time selling product, doesn't have much product, and he doesn't have much money coming in. So Shanti coming in as the person that cares about Jenard. Obviously, she knows a little bit about selling product because she had her guys helping to sell the product, but she tells Jenard that he has an organization problem. He needs to really step up and take care of things. And I'm very curious to see where that relationship goes, because I'm going to tell you right now, I don't believe it's going to end well for either one of those characters. And Jenard would be the main catalyst for that because of the bad decisions that he has been making thus far. But we'll see what happens. But I really do think they're headed for disaster sooner or later. So stay tuned. My second takeaway, I'm also going to touch upon the Flynns because, as Dana already alluded to, this episode we saw a lot of Vic at his lowest, darkest times, doing some very ridiculous and questionable things. Now, obviously, let me just say this right now. I like the grittiness of Power as a show, but it kind of feels like sometimes they get into very unnecessary scenes just to show you, oh yeah, we're edgy with what we're doing in terms of the characters. Like that whole scene with him going to the liquor store and getting a certain job performed. I don't necessarily think that that was necessary for the storytelling. You've already told us that Vic is at a low point. He doesn't trust Claudia, and he also doesn't trust Walter. But of course, what we do find out at the end of this episode is that obviously, we know that Walter pretty much gets in this shipment of these bad pills that he needs to sell. And we, at the same time that this is happening, Claudia is basically sleeping with Brendan, which is the guy who is representing Dublin, to try to get intel to find out what's the deal that Walter has. And she hasn't got any information yet, but she's trying to work her angle to help save the family. But essentially, when Walter gets access to these pills, he approaches both of his kids to ask them to help him sell it. And he goes to Claudia first, obviously. She decides that she's in. He has this whole spiel about, I know you've always wanted to be in charge, so I trust you, and we can do that. But he does tell her he wants Vic in. Then when he goes to Vic, and Vic tells her he wants Claudia cut out of the deal. So we definitely need to stay tuned to see what happens with that, because I feel like Walter is basically, as Dana said, he's out to save himself. All right. So he is going to obviously make a turn on his kids. I think we could see that coming from a mile away, even though he does tell Claudia later in the episode, I had to cut you out. Obviously, people are going to hold grudges. So we need to see what happens with that dynamic. But what I was alluding to earlier is that at the end of this episode, we do find out that Vic now has a plan to take Walter down from the inside, which I think is very interesting. And I think that whole conversation that Tommy had with Vic at the beginning of this episode, he basically comes to Vic and asks him, he does recruit him to CBI. And then, of course, he turns that down. But then he asked him, I need you to let me know who killed Liliana. And of course, Vic says, I don't know, but I will let you know if I find out. So there are a lot of things happening with the Flynn family to the point where I'm very curious to see how this season ends. I don't think that every character makes it out of this season, but we need to stay tuned and see what happens. But it is very interesting in the sense that he wants to take down Walter. And basically what I got out of that conversation with Tommy is basically getting him to start this process of going after Walter, because obviously Tommy does want to find out who killed Liliana, but I'm pretty sure he wouldn't mind if Walter, also ends up getting in some trouble with Vic. So let's see what happens. I do think it is possible those two characters in the future, they do have a bit of a main objective here, and that is to get power and control. So I look forward to seeing what happens next week for sure. And finally, I'm going to go to my final takeaway from this episode. And essentially, everything that happened in this episode regarding Tommy, Diamond, so on and so forth. Now, as Gary already mentioned, my name for today's episode is Chicken Wing is a Snitch, because I thought it was very funny how you have these little random characters on the street. They see something happen, and then they say, oh, I'm not going to say anything. I'm not no snitch. And then moments later, he tells this guy, oh yeah, Chewy, this guy was a part of CBI, so on and so forth. So you kind of already know that was unnecessary, but It was comical because it's like a very random name, Chicken Wing. I never heard of nobody named Chicken Wing, so I thought that was pretty ridiculous. But essentially, what happens is after Tommy kills Chewie, he does go back to see Diamond. Of course, we have to have the unnecessary sex scene of Diamond messing around with his new girl. And Tommy interrupts him, and then pretty much he does tell him he killed Chewie. And of course, Diamond is not happy about that. That's why he does go to talk to Jenard and tries to talk him out of starting a war. Now, throughout this episode, you do see that when Diamond is at his barbershop, he does get visited by the parole officer, and Tommy is there. So the parole officer has now seen Tommy. That cannot be good moving forward, So I'm very curious to see what happens as far as the story is concerned. But Tommy basically goes out on his own to meet up with Miguel because Diamond can't. And when he does that and he goes visit Miguel, we do see that there is a bit of a shooting that takes place. It's a hit by the Serbs because, again, there is a war between Miguel's crew and the Serbs. So Tommy gets shot. We had the whole dramatic thing of Tommy, of course, having to get help by Miguel's sister, Maria. I don't know how to pronounce her name the correct way, so I just say, Miguel's sister. But pretty much, she does fix him up. They have that whole conversation, the flirtatious stuff, and obviously we know at some point that's Tommy's love interest. We'll see how that relationship progresses. But we do also see as Tommy is leaving, he gets to meet the grandmother, and Miguel's mom. She does not like Tommy. She thinks that Miguel needs to watch his back around him. And I think she has very good reason to be worried about him. What I find very interesting, though, is, again, what I like about this episode, as Dana alluded to, is titled Great Consequence. But it's like the entire episode, all this stuff happening with the Serbs is based on last season because of all the stuff that happened with Tommy. The Serbs coming after Tommy and then him having this whole deal with Merkovich and then everything going south. So I just kind of find it interesting. I mean, Tommy is really the root of this issue with the Serbs. Miguel obviously doesn't know that. And then later on in the episode, we do see that once he finds out the meetup spot where where the Serbs are going to be having, that's where him and Diamond go, take them out, and then they take the product to sell for themselves. So this is a very master manipulator plan, here between Tommy and Diamond to basically, they want to become the top distributor in Chicago. And I'm very curious to see what happens once Miguel finds out, because I'm assuming at some point they're going to find out what happened with this whole situation. But they figure, well, they'll just take each other out and then we can be the ones making all the money. It's a very interesting plan. Let's see what happens. But at the very end of this episode, we do unfortunately witness a drive-by that takes place. And again, that's a consequence because of Jenard's guy who decided to go after Tommy, even though Jenard told him not to do that. So what I think was excellent about that and how that was handled is that at the beginning of this episode, we do find out the task force is not approved. And then once this happens and a kid gets killed on the street, now the detective says, okay, now we definitely need to get the task force involved. So I will say, I definitely agree with what Dana said. I like how they set up the episode in terms of what could happen next. But I'm just very curious to see what happens with some of these characters, because my whole thought is that with all the events happening in the show right now, there's no way every single character gets out this season alive. That's just my personal opinion. There has to be some casualties. And now that you have a war that's brewing between the Serbs and Miguel's crew, I kind of feel like, some people are definitely going to get taken out. And Merkovich better get taken out because that character should have got killed last season. That's just my opinion. But we'll see what happens. But overall, I thought it was an okay episode. It was entertaining. Yeah, was there some stuff that was unnecessary? I know it was put in there to just make it a lot more gritty. But overall, I thought it was an okay episode. But let's see what happens next week.
Oh yeah, I agree. It was it was an okay episode. Felt like it feels like they're building at the moment. They're building up the I guess the tension and drama and everything and all the story elements. They're kind of just building out. But yeah, great observations and takeaways there. And hopefully we will expand a little bit more on some of those things when we get to the questions. But yeah, I very much agree with your takes on this one. So let me just get into my takeaways, and then we can have more of a back and forth about that. So firstly, I like this whole I like Jenard's place in this show this season, like, because he's kind of like the problem child a little bit. We see that he's kind of getting himself into a predicament, where he owes Miguel, but he still has he has this arrangement with Merkovich, where he promised him, these corners, but CBI is currently holding these corners, so now he has to pay Merkovich, and he ended up giving the money that he owes to Miguel to Merkovich, and luckily he had Shanti to bail him out this time, but she's not going to be able to do that all the time. So I'm very curious to see what his solution is going to be to this problem. And I do like that, even though he's not really part of CBI anymore, like he's not part of Diamond's crew and stuff. I like that they're spending a lot of time on the character to kind of, develop him still, because he is a very entertaining character to watch. Like the character's expressions, he's got charisma, he's funny, so he's a very entertaining character. And it's cool that they also gave him a love interest, because Shanti as well, she seems like a really cool, interesting character, and I feel like she has probably a very interesting backstory that I would like to know more about. So I want to know how she got into being a boxer and stuff. Like, what was she doing before? So I hope we get to see more of her character too through with Jenard and stuff. Excuse me, I got a bit of a cold still, so I might cough and talk a bit slowly. But yeah, I'm loving the whole Jenard dynamic. And what I'm thinking as well is that I feel like Jenard is going to get himself into some serious trouble this season. And I feel like that is going to make Diamond have to kind of like save him somewhat. Like he's going to have to help his brother out. And this is going to cause conflict with Tommy, because we know these two characters don't get along at all, Jenard and Tommy. And you see what happened at the end of the episode. One of Jenard's men fired at Tommy. So like the beef is escalating between the two, it's only getting worse. So I think it creates an interesting dynamic if Jenard gets himself into so much trouble that Diamond has to bail him out. And maybe it's so bad that Diamond needs help bailing out his brother, and he actually goes to Tommy to help him, and what is Tommy's reaction going to be to that if that's the case? I think it creates a very interesting dynamic, because we even see in this episode, Diamond actually goes to talk to his brother. So they're able to be cordial and talk to each other because they're blood, they're brothers. But if what would happen if Tommy has to go and help this dude? Like, I think that's going to be interesting to see. So yeah, I can't wait to see how these situations escalate for Jenard, and what that does to his relationship with Diamond. And second takeaway, see, I could talk about either one of these first. So let me see. Should I mention this one first? As we can see, Miguel has some. Yeah, so I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do my third one first. So as we like in this episode, we see that Miguel, there's someone higher up to Miguel in the cartel, right? Because his abuela, his grandma, she actually tells him to go talk to this dude about the Serbs, and then he ends up visiting this guy in the club. And he's basically saying, yo, we need to go to war with the Serbs, right now, like, because, they're shooting at us and everything, like they're disrespecting us, so we need to go to war. But the guy basically talks him down And he goes one step further than talking him down. Like he threatens his sister, he threatens doing all this stuff. Like, so this is a real serious dude, like a real, and I feel like this creates an interesting dynamic for Miguel now, because what I'm thinking is, what if at some point he tries to take this dude out to take his place in the cartel? Because he could very much try to do that. I think that is the next progression for the character, to kind of take this guy's place and be like the top dog in the cartel, in Chicago. Because why is he, taking that crap from him? He's talking about his sister like that, when all he wanted to do was clap back at the Serbs, which I guess it is a big deal, because that messes up the pipelines and all that stuff. But he didn't have to go there with him, because excuse me, because Miguel wasn't disrespectful to him when he was talking. So this guy just went straight for the jugular. So yeah, I feel like I kind of want to see Miguel take this dude out, at some point. And who knows, maybe he'll even ask for help when he does that. Like, maybe he'll even tell, Tommy and Diamond, if you help me with this, with this mission that I'm running, then I'll cut you in the deal and give you good rates or whatever, So maybe that's something we might see, because I really want to see that guy die now after he said that stuff to Miguel. So that would be cool. So then let me get to my final takeaway. So Tommy's approach, Richard mentioned it, Tommy's approach with basically him and Diamond going to shoot up the deal and everything and take the product. Like, that was a very deceptive way to go about things, because I thought, especially after the whole shootout that happened where Tommy kind of helped Miguel and then he got shot himself, I thought after all that, he would try to do his best to build trust with Miguel, especially if he clearly has a thing for Miguel's sister, So I thought Tommy would probably try to, build a lot of trust and goodwill, good faith with Miguel and the cartel. But, clearly he still has his own motives at the forefront, because, he orchestrated this whole thing to take all the product and escalate the beef between the Serbs and the cartel. So he's just creating more problems for Miguel and everyone by doing that. So it's a very bold move for Tommy, and I guess it does kind of show. This is why that's good, right? Because if you compare this show to Ghost, although Ghost is the better show, it's more entertaining in my opinion. But one thing they're doing well with this show so far is that they're making Tommy a very active character. Like, he's making active decisions, that change the story and affect the story. So that's one thing I got to give him credit for, because he could have easily been passive in that situation and tried to tailor to Miguel a little bit more, but he chose to do his own thing with Diamond and do the thing that benefits him the most. But he's very bold because he's also shooting at Miguel's sister. He's still trying to get with her and stuff. So it's very bold how he's moving, and I can't wait to see, how that ends up, because I'm sure it's seeming like every week Maria is taking more of a liking to Tommy. So at some point, we're probably going to see them get together or have a date or something. So I want to see what Miguel's reaction is going to be to that when he finds out, especially as well, with the abuela, the grandmother. What is she going to say if she sees something like that go down, if she sees, Tommy getting with Maria? So that's going to be very interesting too. But yeah, those are my main takeaways. I will say, I very much agree with what you guys said. They're doing a good job of building towards a bigger story. I think they're putting all the pieces in place. especially with the new task force now. You know, I like how they kind of built that up a little bit to say, okay, now the task force is really going to take off because, you know, X, Y, and Z happened, you know, the shootout and then the child getting hit, you know, that's the reason for the task force. So I like how they built that up. They're doing a good job with that. It's just, you know, like Dana was saying, there's just a few things that kind of make a few of the scenes feel forced. No pun intended with that, but you know, sometimes it just feels a bit forced with the dialogue and the things they're trying to show, you know, with the characters and stuff. There's not a lot of subtlety there, you know, especially like with that convenience store, the liquor store scene or whatever. Like it's like there's no subtlety, it just kind of happens. It goes right into, you know, sex scene, you know, like edginess or whatever. And yeah, it was uncalled for because we already knew, like Richard said, we already knew this guy was down bad, you know, so they didn't even need to do that. But yeah, it's just that's what power does, I guess, you know. So it is what it is. But yeah, decent episode. It wasn't standout or anything, but it was good. So those are my takeaways. But Dana, you had something to say?
Yeah, I have a question or something that kind of both of you mentioned. One, first of all, I've heard of many chicken wings, and you know, people who are lingering in the dark, who you know do something strange with some change, but you know they're always out there knowing what's going on, and that's how he was able to get the pancake. Where you know he's able to feed him information. It kind of was, you could argue, a little bit similar to what Bubbles served in The Wire. He just always remember he always knew because he was there on the streets. I think every neighborhood has that, whether it's the old nosy white neighbor to the drunken guy on the super who's always is there. Every neighborhood has one of those people. But one of the things that was interesting was, I'm trying to be devil's advocate here, of putting in a scene that may have seemed wasteful, but actually they can come back to later. So, for example, Chicken Wing being the observer, knowing what's going on, right? Basically saying that what you think that you're doing in the dark is always going to, someone's always looking, it's going to come to light. But also, and this also goes with the name that I have there, Chico from Queens. We already know that Tommy has a history in New York. We know that they are looking for him, you know, that he's not dead. It's very easy for people eventually, not now, to start talking. And the fact that they could have easily just say, hey, my name is Chico, and that's it. He said, I'm Chico from Queens, and he made a point to say, here is how we're connected. So I wonder, are we going to get back to that? Or is this going to just be another throwaway scene of, remember we were supposed to get the Jamaicans from last season, and we never got our Jamaicans. So I think, I hope that is something that does come into light. Also, really interesting is the concept of we all answer to someone. We thought that Miguel was the big head honcho. You know, we saw him torturing people, being all strong. But then we find out that he has a boss. And we saw how angry he got, how belittled he was. You know, so everyone seems to answer to someone in this show. No one, and to go back on power, has the full power yet. And my question, kind of to both of you, I wanted to know whether or not you feel, yes, we're only in the second episode, but we're in the second episode of the second season. Do you feel that they're still relying too much on Ghost? When we saw previously, oh, I'm like a ghost in the shadow. We saw in this episode, you know, oh, I had a friend who used to say that. We all knew who he was talking about. He's constantly alluding to Ghost. Do you feel that this show relies too much on Ghost?
I didn't actually mind that because it's like that was a big part of Tommy's life. You know, him and Ghost, they grew up together, and that did affect him and who he became. So something like that, I don't mind, like him saying, "Oh, my old partner used to say that." But I do agree, like, you know, when, like, for instance, when you were saying last week, like he doesn't need the cameos from Ghost and all that stuff. Like, he can hold his own in the show. I do believe, you know, Tommy as a character is able to hold his own without having to, you know, rely on the cameos and all the other characters from the other shows. But part of me does want to see that though. Like, from time to time, I do want to see another character that we know step in, you know, even if it's just for an episode or half an episode, just because it is a universe and it's cool to see that. But I agree with you in the sense that Tommy can hold his own as a character, you know, and not have to rely on all the other stuff. But one thing I did love is the Julio reference, because
Yes.
nobody talks about Julio, and he was one of the most loyal characters in Power, period. Like, he was like one of the best. So I like that.
I'm glad you mentioned that, and yeah, I'm glad that Dana brought that up, because I think that can get revisited if they find out what really happened to Julio. Maybe this guy Chico knows what really happened to Julio. So I'm very curious to see if that is explored. But to answer the question, I do think that I actually agree with you, Dana. I don't want them to keep referencing Ghost. I think that the decision that Tommy made at the end of this episode, when him and Diamond decided to take the product, I don't know if that's a move that Ghost would make. And this is why I say it's going to be very interesting to see how that pans out, because, as Gary said, very deceptive way to do business. And Tommy also has the balls to still go after Miguel's sister as well. There's no way all of this is going to end positively. So I would love to see what happens, because I don't think Ghost would make that move unless he, you know, I mean, he could make that move, right? But he's not going to make that move and also try to get the girl too. I don't think that, I don't know if he would do that. But I do think that this season they're going to try to do as much as possible to establish Tommy as his own man. This is why when we were talking about in the premiere episode that it feels as though it's more Tommy-centric focused, and he has a lot of active action in what's happening in the story. So I kind of feel like they're going to try to move away from that. But yeah, I don't mind the reference to Ghost, but I definitely don't want to hear Ghost too often in this season, in my opinion, moving forward.
Yeah, like when they spam the word Ghost, yeah, I don't like that. Like, you don't have to spam the whole word, like using all these cliches and stuff. But but yeah, I agree. And no, go ahead, Daniel.
No. I was gonna just, because it's another part that I want to bring up. Really quickly, was the end when Victor had his monologue scene. I was wondering, especially for you, Gary, because you're a writer, you published a writer, by the way. Go get his books; he's amazing. Yay! Do you feel that this show has too much exposition and it does a lot of telling instead of showing? If I'm laying out all of my plans, I would rather, for me, see that, as opposed to you saying, and then I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to do this, and I'm going to get you back, Dad, you know, and this, I can't stand you with this. Or would you rather him just stay silent and we see him move that's opposite than how he's supposed to move? Because that last scene, to me, I'm like, why are you talking so much? How do you both feel about that?
Yeah. No, you go first, Rich, actually. Yeah.
I'm actually also very curious to hear Gary's answer. But I agree 1,000% with you, Dana. I'd rather them just show us what's happening. I feel the reason he had that monologue at the end about what his intentions are was to let the audience know, yeah, you may think I'm working with my dad, but I'm really going to stab him in the back. I think they did that intentionally to make it very clear to the audience that he's going to turn on his dad. But they could have done that a different way without him actually saying that in the actual monologue. So I agree 100%. I want them to show stuff instead of telling us ahead of time. And I especially, this is a callback to Power Ghosts, because Gary said the show is excellent. I agree. But I still had an issue with what happened to the father on that show, and how we knew exactly how he was going to get killed, because Monet set that whole thing up. So I would prefer if we just see it happen as opposed to being told exactly what's going to happen. Then when it happens, I'm not surprised because I knew he was going to get killed. So, but I agree.
No, yeah, you're both 100% right about that. I think what this show sometimes has a problem with is the ratio of showing and telling. And like I feel like sometimes they show when they do show, they show the wrong thing. Like, you know, they spend time showing us something that doesn't matter. Like, but then they tell us the major plot points, like they just give it away, you know, they tell us like that example you had about Vic, you know, and his father, like, yeah, don't tell us that because we want to see what he plans to do ourselves, you know, through his character development. So yeah, I completely agree with that. I feel like they just need to like I don't know what the problem is, but they need to focus more on showing us the important things that drive the plot and the character motivations, and show us less of, you know, like the liquor store. You know, we didn't need to see stuff like that. You know, you could have spent more time showing us like, you know, some important character development. We already knew Vic was down bad. He's been moping about for, you know, the past 2 weeks now, like, you know, in this show. So yeah, so I think that's really it. You know, they just need to tighten up and show us the important character moments. Go ahead, Rich.
And I was just going to say a perfect example of them doing it right is exactly what Tommy and Diamond did at the end of the episode, because Tommy told Diamond they want to be the top distributors, and then Diamond said, well, the only way that's going to happen is if we kill Miguel and the Serbs. And instead, Tommy, you saw him lay out the plan. Take out these guys, take the product. It wasn't where him saying, okay, well, this is what we're going to do. We're going to take the product and do all this other stuff. We actually saw that play out on the show. So yeah, that's an example of them doing it correctly as opposed to what they did with Vic. So I agree. They definitely need to show us more instead of just saying this is what's happening.
And you could even argue the drive-by scene that was showing without telling. We knew that there was conflict between them and Jenard. You know, we should take them out. And then Jenard saying, no, don't do that. We didn't sit through a plan of saying, you know, at 2:00, we're going to hit this street and he's going to be here and we're on the lookout. We just got a scene of something's kind of weird. There's a little tension in the air. Oh, there's a drive-by. We don't know who it is at first. Oh, it's Dumb and Dumber. They did it. And then we see an innocent person on the ground. I thought that was perfectly executed. Just overall for me, certain things don't need to be explained constantly. And I just wonder, is that just to fill the time? Because, you know, you have to meet a certain amount of minutes and pages. Then it just makes me wonder the overall structure of the show. What are you doing? I wonder.
I agree.
Yeah, it could be that. It could be them trying to fill time and stuff. But I feel like there's much more better and more creative ways to fill that time. Like you could show us some other interesting things, but yeah, I don't know. Maybe it will get better as it goes along. Who knows? You know, as the story gets a bit juicier, maybe you know, the showing will get better too. But you know, because I guess like in the early stages of the season, maybe they have to like carry the audience a little bit, like carry them along to get into the story. So maybe that's why they're telling certain things. But yeah, good points overall. Good questions. So you know, I have a few questions too. So let me start with this one since we were just talking about Vic. So do you think, you know, this relates to a comment that I think Jeremiah left it on the last episode, but do you think that, you know, throughout this season, we're going to get a very strong redemption arc for Vic's character? Like, is he really going to, you know, become like a key figure in this show and become, you know, one of the shining members of the cast? Because so far he's been very lackluster as a character. You know, even in season 1, you know, he was very into Gloria, and you know, neglecting, the family responsibilities and stuff. And now, he's kind of mourning Gloria still. But now, he's starting to, it seems like his arc is starting to kind of kick off a little bit where, now his father's asking for his help and he's agreed to work with him. But then we see he's also thinking about, sabotaging things for his father a little bit. But so the question is, do you think that he's going to go through like a full redemption arc in this episode to the point where he's going to be a major figure in this show that people love to watch, and who's going to contribute heavy to the core plot points of the show, like, to the point where he affects what Tommy is doing? Do you see him going that far in this season, or is he going to still continue to be an average, lackluster character? So Rich, what do you think about that?
That's a very interesting question. You said you are asking, do we think he's going to become a shining part of the show? My personal opinion, I just don't see that. I know there's no way. I mean, I don't see that. But let me clarify what I'm saying. The character does need a redemption arc. We can all agree after what happened last season with Gloria and the fact that he wants to get revenge on Walter, that needs to happen. But here is the thing. It's going to be very complex because the whole thing about family, and this is what I believe you or Dana mentioned earlier about the fact that Jenard may need to get saved by Diamond, so on and so forth. Well, I think that, once Vic finds out that Claudia was the one that killed Liliana, that's going to be a bit of a conflict because he wants to hurt Walter, not his sister. But then again, I don't know, because he tried to work with his sister and she decided to do things her own way. So I don't really know, but I'm pretty sure he only would want to hurt her. He wouldn't want her killed. The character, I think, wants Walter dead, at some point, because Walter has a lot of stuff going on. I find it interesting also Walter has not brought up the health issues that he has had last season. That hasn't really been mentioned yet again this season. And I believe both the kids know that he's in bed. Doesn't have good health. I mean, but my whole thought is that I think he's going to be tested this entire season because he's going to have this plan where he wants to take down Walter. And as he is putting this together, he's going to have some conflict with that plan. Now, I don't really know how it's going to play out, but I do agree the character does need to get some redemption because, again, as you both said, he has looked pretty pathetic since the season has started. You kind of want to see him get some redemption, but when you ask the question about him being a shining star, I don't think he's going to really be that big of a star on this show. Claudia, to me, is the most interesting character on the, in that family on the show right now. And I think that will remain consistent because from season 1, you saw her, being basically working with Tommy, then starting to kill people. You saw her develop as a character to become more ruthless from season 1 to season 2. So I definitely think they can do some stuff with Vic in this season. And I believe he's going to get some type of redemption, but I don't think he's going to ever become a major star on this show. That's just my opinion. But I definitely want to see what they have in store for him as a character, for sure.
Interesting. Do you feel like it's a matter of the actor? Like, do you think the actor could carry a more important role, or is it just the character itself?
I don't think the actor is bad. I mean, I think he's working with the material that he's given. And I kind of feel like Gary Lennon is going to try to do more with that character this season. But in terms of him being a major player on the show, I don't know if I could see that. They had the whole thing where he established that relationship with Seamus last season, working with this guy and all this other stuff. And they have some type of power. I mean, he is basically considered, he's supposed to be the next to take over, even though Claudia has proven that she can take over as well. So it's common, this family dynamic. I'm very curious to see where they go with it. I do, but again, he is going to get some type of redemption, right? You can't have the character not get some type of redemption. and some of his plan may go through, but there's going to be some conflict that he runs into at some point. I don't know what the conflict is going to be yet, but if it has to do with telling Tommy Claudia is the one that killed Liliana, that's going to be a problem. And you already know, as they showed us last season, if Tommy wanted to take out Vic, he could take him out just like that. So I'll be curious to see what happens with him moving forward.
Yeah. And how about you, Dana? What do you think about Vic and his arc?
I want Vic to be forced to grow up. For example, if he kills his father and he thinks that it's going to go one way and it ends up going another, and it requires him to be a man. I feel that Vic is at this point where he has to be forced to grow up. We do know that the Irish mob is after the family. Tragedy could easily bestow the family. Claudia could easily be taken out. And therefore, he could be forced to have to rely on himself. So I feel that that would be something that would be more beneficial. You could also look at it. I look at it as two ways. You can, and I know we're going, why does this rely so much on power? But you can view it as a Tariq situation where Tariq had to grow up, and we always like this little kid. He's annoying. He needs to get his behind beat every time. We rejoiced in that scene when they beat him with the bag of oranges because we was like, he deserved it. And then we look at him now, and they looked at what they did to the season finale. He's literally, you could argue, he's on his own. He has his best friend, but he's on his own. You know, Tommy gave him that, cut all loose ends, go forth and be free. So I could see that kind of happening with Vic, but he is at that stage. I feel even if Gloria never died, he has someone who has to tell him something to do. Gloria had to tell him what to do. And even if she was alive, she would still be telling him what to do. Yes, you can say he made the choice to do it, but someone had to tell him. I want him to step up and think for things for himself. And maybe you can argue that's what that entire monologue was about. Him coming to the decision to do something that no one else told him to do. So we could see pieces of that happening. But I really feel Vic is the kind of person, at least right now in this stage of his life, where he has to be fully forced for that to happen. Dad might have to die, so there is no connection to that. And we already know he's older. He's sick, as you alluded to from last season. That the fact that he has to push bad, what was it, heroin? Or one of those pills, I'm not sure what it was, but he has to push bad drugs. That can cause a whole nother thing where he can end up jailed, or maybe, in retribution, somebody comes after him. But I really feel that he's not going to be a man organically. So we'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, that's my final answer. And what are we redeeming him from? What exactly are we redeeming him from? Redeeming him from constantly being up under his father, constantly being up under Gloria's boob? What exactly is his redemption? He was someone who, if you really looked at it, his girl was murdered by accident, and now he has no one, or at least at that moment, he had no one to rely on. He was stuck and depressed and sad, and I understand grief, but what are we redeeming him from? From his grief? A natural emotion? If you look at the first season of him even being introduced, he's soft. What was his one big brave scene? His one big brave scene was when he was in the alleyway. Remember when he was in the alleyway in, I think the first episode or the second episode of the first season? And he was acting like a big tough guy? Okay, what else do you have? So I don't know. There's nothing to redeem. Redeem yourself from being a child and having a backbone. And, we could be getting glimpses of that. But in all honesty, I don't really feel, sorry, that what he says is going to end up being his action. Because we all say, no, I can't stand this person. You know, we all have that, I should have said this and this to the person. You know, we have an argument. And yeah, and that's why, you know, your mama's a hoe. But you don't say that out loud. You said it in your head. And you regret the fact that you didn't say that. But when you see that person that you just had the argument again, hi, how you doing? And you don't say anything. So that's where I feel that Vic is at that stage. I feel that he is at that internal, I'm going to do this. Yeah, I'm going to kill my dad. Where's the action? And granted, he just now said that, but I look forward to there being some action. So until that, there's nothing to redeem. Just in period, there's nothing to redeem. He's constantly playing the victim in the situation. What are we redeeming you from? So yeah, that's just my take.
Yeah, no, yeah, I get what you're saying about what is there to redeem, but so here is what I would like to happen with Vic in this season, right? I would like for Walt to pass away this season, just because I feel like if Walt goes, it is going to force both Vic and Claudia to pick up a lot of his, responsibility and stuff, like, all of the stuff that he does running his empire is going to fall directly on them if Walt is gone. So I do want that to happen. I feel like whenever that does happen, it is going to elevate both those characters a lot more. But also, we know that Tommy wants to avenge Liliana, and we know that Claudia was the culprit, was the one who pulled the trigger, right? And in this episode, we actually see that Vic kind of, he kind of like, he doesn't tell him who killed. He doesn't tell him outright who killed Liliana. He hides it from him. And yeah, so I feel like maybe that is alluding to something that might happen later. And the way I see it is maybe Tommy finds out that it was Claudia and he comes after her, and maybe Vic is forced to protect his sister. And maybe that is like a moment, for him where he is forced to kind of take that strong stance, that strong role in the family. Go ahead, Rich.
I like that theory, and I'm gonna tell you right now, if that happens, I could very easily see Tommy kills Vic, because the thing is, when Liliana, when Liliana got killed, Claudia felt a little sad about that. She didn't mean to do it, but I could see Tommy be like, okay, well, I came after you. I wasn't able to get you, but I did get somebody that was important to you. So now that will put them on a war path in season 3, where Claudia and Tommy, now they both know they got to take each other out to some extent. But that's probably what's going to end up happening. So if that's the direction they go, that's probably what's going to end up happening.
Yeah, or maybe even Tommy's, like, maybe it's a situation where Walt is there too when Tommy tries to come at Claudia, and Tommy ends up taking out Walt, and then then it's the 2 siblings against Tommy in season 3 or something like that.
I just want to quickly say I don't like that.
I just don't see Vic dying that quick.
I don't like that. I think that Walter has did enough where his own people should take him out, as opposed to an outsider. I just feel that it's his theme so much is family and tradition and doing things a certain way, that you're putting the fear of God or into him, because now the Irish mob is after him. And to just have that all go away and have Tommy be the one to take him out negates everything of what they kind of build up with this character and this entire family. He's established himself through this Irish, mob family and his past. And I think that it's one of those situations where I would prefer that his past, catches up to him and it has to just be done. And then again, when we talk about throwaway characters, the guy who he was that Claudia's sleeping with, who is on the other side of the family. For me, I just need that to happen as opposed to Tommy. It just loses. It just loses things for me. I just don't. I don't want to see that.
I agree 100%. And my comment is, if it does happen the other way, we can easily, and let's say they have no further character development for Vic. Well, we know Vic wanted to take Walter out. So, but if Tommy takes Walter out instead, I could see him being angry about that, because if they don't develop the character, he's just always whiny and stuff like that. And then on the same token, I do feel like Claudia wants to get back at her dad now, because now Walter brought Vic into this and cut her out of this. So if they go in that direction, Claudia and Vic and Tommy does take out Walter, I think Claudia and Vic have a legitimate reason to be angry that they weren't able to take out Walter, and now they want to get revenge on Tommy. That's if they don't do any development. But I want to see what they do with Vic as a character, because they have to have some type of plan for him to have these lines like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to take out my dad from the inside." Okay, so now as a viewer, I want to see how that is actually going to play out, but I don't think it's going to work the way he thinks it's going to work. So we'll see.
Yeah, I agree. Just because he said it doesn't mean he's actually going to do it. Anything could happen. So yeah, but good discussion there. I do want to get to another question. So Tommy, as a character, he has a long history. We've seen it all play out. Now, Tommy has a curse, right? He has a curse where his girlfriends end up dead. We saw it with Harley. We saw it with Holly. We saw it with Lakeisha. So if you date Tommy, it's potentially very dangerous. So the question is basically, and this is just a fun one, if he does end up with Maria, will she survive the Tommy curse? So first of all, I guess it could be a two-part question. Do you see her going all the way with Tommy? Because we see that she has her own rules and that she doesn't date her brother's associates or whatever. So you could answer that part of the question too, like if you actually think they're going to end up together. But also, if they do end up together, is she going to be able to survive the Tommy curse? So two-part question there. Go ahead, Dana. You're shaking your head, so you can start. You could go first.
I knew she was dying the second that she said, "If you knew it was good for you, you would stay far away." That was the moment when I was like, "Oh, you're dead." Because remember, we always have an innocent. And even though she is Miguel's sister, she doesn't get involved in that lifestyle. She may come and help, remove a bullet out of your body, stitch you up, put a cold pack on you, make sure you have some aspirin, but that's it. She doesn't get involved. And we know that this is going to create even more conflict with Miguel. And we know Abuela is going to go. Abuela looks like one of those kind of women who led a revolution in her country. So I'm just waiting for her to grab that shotgun and chase Tommy with it. But yeah, that girl is dead. And we do know that they get involved because remember the promos and the trailers and the teasers kind of showed him with her in the bed, kissing, smiling. And I'm like, oh, once you start smiling, googly eyes, and you say that horrible line, I'm not that kind of girl. You done screwed up. She's dead. That's sometimes that should just be Tommy's curse. As long as he is involved in this lifestyle, there will always be a woman who is dead. And you could even argue, even though they wasn't banging, what was the woman who died last season? Liliana, because every woman he gets close to ends up dead. Tasha somehow was just a miracle child. But yeah, so rest in peace. I will watch the funeral. Thoughts and prayers to the family, but she's dead.
Yeah, Tasha was the miracle child, but he still tried to kill her too. So, so I mean, yeah, the curse remains. You know, if you don't end up dead, he's gonna try and kill you. So, uh,
You can make the argument the only reason why she's still alive is because Tommy moved on and didn't want to kill her anymore. Because remember when we got that scene, we was like, oh, she's gonna die. We knew she was gonna die, but he was the one who was like, why are we doing this? I'm tired. So when he decides he's not gonna kill you, you're good. But that's kind of the only person he's female wise he's given grace to was Tasha.
yeah,
So
true.
yeah.
Yeah, and that's a good point about Liliana. You know, they went together, but she got close to him, so she's part of the Tommy curse too. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Maria better watch herself. And I guess Kate is also exempt because you know it's his mother, but yeah.
Kate,
um,
I feel, will eventually kill herself. And I think that they made a point with saying, I'm clean now. Look at my family. Yay, I'm a grandma. I feel something is going to happen where okay, random thought, ding, ding, ding. Something's going to happen where she needs that hit or something. And she ends up getting involved with the drugs that we know is bad that the father has to sell. And that could take her out. Then, therefore, that connects with Tommy, and then he goes after Flynn. So remember, this season is about war. What we're seeing so far, and even if you look at the trailers, you know, um, they did that whole which is not Frank Sinatra, but Nat King Cole version of something with less dance. So I really feel that in order to tie things in in order to really initiate that war thing, because right now, if you look at it, the Flynn's and Tommy are neutral. Even though we can't stand each other, they're not going toe to toe, head to head. They're neutral right now. We need something to ignite that spark. And I do feel by her saying, I'm clean, and he's like, Mom, take it. He kept emphasizing, Mom. He wasn't even like happy, like, hey, Mom, I'm proud of you. He was like, what's wrong with you? You stupid or something? Here's some crack. So I think that is how we get into the bad drugs. Because if we look at it right now, who was in the show would be the most vulnerable to the drugs? You could say Vic, but Vic knows that they would be bad because he came to the son. So therefore, it has to be her. Tommy's not around. She goes to the local, drug dealer dude. Here's these bad pills. She's in the corner, like, and she did. And we've seen that. Remember in the last season, and we never got back to this, and it bothered my soul. Remember, there was a guy who was connected to the Flynns who ended up being a drug addict on the street that the father kind of tended. No, it wasn't the father.
well,
It was the
Paulie's son.
Paulie's son. Where the
Yeah,
hell is Paulie?
the
Is he dead?
the the concierge or whatever is, you know,
The
the
consigliere.
Walt's friend.
Where's the consigliere? Where's he at?
He was
Is
in
he in
this
our house?
episode.
Yeah, he's
Oh,
still talking to
oh,
Walter. He's still consulting Walter.
oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah.
He's a good consigliere because I didn't even know he was there. But yeah, so we kind of set up the theme. You could argue about drug addiction and how it affects the ones who are closest to us. Mom is a drug addict. Yay! Kill off mom. I'm good.
Yeah, that is actually a very great take right there. Like I could see that happening. Like, you know, they somehow Kate relapses and gets those pills, and like that would be amazing. Like I see you're a writer too. See, you gotta give yourself some credit. So that's a good take. I would love to see that. And like you said, that would be, you know, something that ignites the beef between the Flynns and the Egan family. So yeah, good take right there. Good theory. But Rich, how about you? What do you think about, you know, Tommy's curse? And you could also respond to, you know, what Dana said as well about Kate.
First and foremost, yeah, that's an excellent take by Dana because that also made me think about another scene in this episode we did not discuss, where Diamond is having a conversation with his girlfriend We know his girlfriend is somehow connected to the police. All right. They had their whole spiel where she came in. I guess they were role playing, but they're having this conversation, and she uses Dahlia, right? And she asked him, "Oh, so you're still not messing around with it?" He says, "No, I don't do any of that." So I'm very curious to see, as Diamond is dealing with the situation with his brother, because I do believe the comment that was made on this episode earlier about him having to help Jenard, that's a very real possibility in the future. I want to see how that's going to affect him emotionally, whether or not he does end up trying Dahlia, because that can definitely happen. And if that does happen, that will not be that's not going to be a good thing for the character moving forward, I would say. But I want to see what's happening, because again, the fact that they have random drug tests, the parole officer could show up at any time. We already know Diamond doesn't do drugs, right? But they made it a point to emphasize the random drug tests. So I want to see if he falls victim to this later, either him or the girlfriend, because she is messing around with Dahlia. So stay tuned for that. To answer your question, though, Gary, I think that's a trick question when you ask, is Tommy going to have a relationship with Maria? Yes, and we knew this in the first episode, because he still has to teach her how to drive as well, right? So that's probably going to happen pretty soon, and things may escalate from there. But yes, that is Tommy's love interest. He is going to have a relationship with her, and yes, it's going to end in tragedy. But I will also add and say this. The fact that Miguel still has Maria around amidst all the chaos that's happening with him and the Serbs, she already is on borrowed time, in my opinion, because she should not be anywhere near, after what happened in this episode with the shootout, she shouldn't be nowhere near that area. Obviously, she was in the back. She was there to help Tommy out. And of course, because we know that her brother has diabetes, she's there to check up on him as well. But the fact that she is still in this environment with all this chaos that's about to happen with this war, she's also a target. She can get taken out. And as you mentioned, Gary, the guy who is Miguel's boss, by the way, I also want to see that character get killed, because I thought he was very disrespectful with how he treated Miguel. So he also alluded to the fact that he would do something to her as well. So I feel like the character is, one way or another, she's on borrowed time. She can get taken out at any point. So we need to stay tuned and see what happens. But yeah, I look forward to seeing what happens. But that character is not going to make it around. And as Kate alluded to before, when she spoke to Tommy, I remember she told him, anytime you get around people, it doesn't end well. It doesn't end well for you. So yeah, she was right, and she's going to be right again, because something is going to happen to Miguel's sister. I guarantee it.
And do you see? Did you already answer the Kate thing? You already did, right?
Oh no. Yeah, I said that's an excellent take by Dana. I 100% could see that happening, and it would make sense, right? Because now Kate has a family, she's trying to turn over a new leaf, and she likes having a relationship with her grandson, so on and so forth. So yes, that this is going to end in tragedy. It's going to end in tragedy. And yeah, I do like the idea of Tommy finding out about the pills, that Walter has something to do with that, because yeah, that will give him more motivation to go after them too. So I want to see how all this plays out. But that's an excellent take by Dana. I agree. 100%. She is a writer coming up with these types of ideas.
Indeed. I also want to give a shout out to good friend Dimitri, because he actually had a take on Kate that he told me about. And yeah, he was basically saying that he thinks that Kate could be sick already. And that could be like the reason for her not taking drugs, because I think there was a moment in the first episode where she kind of coughed or something. So he thinks that she might be hiding her sickness. And then there's another layer to this where he thinks that she might actually end up needing a donor. And that's when it comes out that there is a relation between the Egans and the Flynns. So that could be something, But what do you think of that theory? Because the Irish bloodline, Go ahead, Dana.
But not person is related. Like, we were all black, but we're not sitting here related.
Yeah,
I call you
know.
Brother Richard and Brother Gary. That's like a spurt. No.
But it's TV, you know. It's TV.
I mean, it is TV. Okay, yeah. So going off of that, it is TV. I think it feels kind of cheap. If that ends up being the case, I would laugh so hard. But I think that we already had, Black Tommy, and that's enough. So we should just be happy with Black Tommy being a random brother. Where they established that, and then he just went away, which is good. He was there a couple of minutes, but then he went away. I don't like that idea. I really don't. It feels so cliche. It seems like one of those plot twists that we've seen so many times, from movies to TV shows to cartoons, that it would just feel cheap at this point. And then, like, what would be the point? I don't see anyone, and say, for example, the Flynn family donating a body part to Tommy's mom. I just, you know what I mean? I don't see it.
I mean, they might not go through with it, but maybe through the whole process, if they figure it out, but maybe they don't.
But you would need blood tests and everything else. You need, why would they even put themselves in that predicament?
Because remember, Walt is sick too, so like there could be, I don't know, there could be a way to link that.
But if you're both sick, that's not logical. If we're both sick in the hospital and we both, they ran some blood tests, a doctor's not going to randomly come up to you, hey, did you know that's your biological brother over there, Gary? So I just don't. I hope that would be atrocious. I would prefer the bad dialogue than that.
I don't think. I don't think it's a bad take, because there was actually a point in the first season where I thought that's where it was going. I thought Kate was related to them. But what I do like is your take about the bad pills. I think that would be interesting. But this take with them being related, I feel like if they were going to go in that direction, maybe season 1 would have been the better, part to do that. I think now maybe it's, I don't know, but it's not a bad take. But go ahead, Rich.
I agree. It's not necessarily a bad take. I guess they can have a lot of different things they can go for. I like Dana's idea better, but I do want to add this in there, because this ties back to what we spoke about earlier. We made the comment that we don't like, or we don't want them to keep referencing Ghost. But one thing I do want to say is this: as far as Kate is concerned, remember when Ghost died, he sent money to Kate. She actually he gave her more than he ever gave to Tasha, everyone else. So the point that I'm trying to get to is, it would make sense for something bad to happen to Kate and for her to get killed, because that's another part of somebody who knew Ghost, knew about his relationship with Tommy, growing up as kids, so on and so forth. So that is, again, getting rid of anything having to do with Ghost that Tommy would feel something for. And obviously Tommy, he would be an emotional wreck if something does happen to his mom, even though he doesn't want to act that way around her sometime. He would be. So that's why I feel something bad is going to happen to her. We just have to wait and see how it plays out. But the character, I feel, at some point is going to die for sure. But go ahead.
Okay, so 1, I completely forgot about the money. 2, has anyone used any of the money? Because they're still kind of in the same situation that they are right now. Where is the money? Question. Is it in escrow? Is it in the house? What is going on with the money? And the only thing that I can kind of maybe don't know that it could pull off is, say someone is looking for Tommy. They go to the mom's house. They discover the money. They kill her. That could be the only way how I can see, and we're at this point in the show where everybody needs money at this moment, except for obviously Tommy. Everyone is owing someone, but that could work. But I don't know how I feel about that. But you just brought up the money situation. Where is the money? What happened
I have
to
no
it?
idea.
I mean, did anyone at least?
That's a good question. I have no idea where it is. And as you said, the current situation that's been happening on the other show, I don't know how that impacts anything else. But I'm just saying, obviously, Kate treated Ghost more like a son than she did Tommy. So what I'm saying is that it makes sense for her to die at some point, because that's, again, Tommy's past coming to an end when he loses people around him. So he loses his mom too. We know he killed his father. We know all about that in the original Power. So I think that's going to happen at some point. But the question of how it happens, that's what I want to see how that plays out. Because it could be she is sick, as y'all said. It could be that she takes the bad pills, which I think that would make perfect sense for everything to come full circle. I will say this though, that whole thing about the donor, I think that'd be a little too much. But I will say this: I would laugh if they took that approach, and Tommy has already killed Walter, so they find out, oh, he was a match. Well, it doesn't matter now because he's already dead. So that'll be kind of funny. But no, I don't know if they're going to do that. I don't think they're going to do that. But I look forward to seeing what they do.
We know that Tommy paid. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was just simply saying, like, we know that Tommy paid for the bar, the new bar.
Yeah.
Was that where's the money?
Oh, that's from them, selling the product, right? Selling the product, having a whole bunch of money. By the way,
yeah.
By the way, I think we can all agree that bar is probably going to get destroyed, because now that Tommy is caught in all this mess, at some point they're going to find out, oh, if he's related to these other characters, they'll go to that bar. Maybe they'll burn it down or whatever. I can see that coming from a mile away. So stay tuned for that.
Oh yeah, something's happening to that bar. That bar's getting messed up.
But then that opens the door to another question. Do you feel that JP will finally get into the family business?
Yes. That would force him, because Tommy does not want him to get involved. That's why he got him the bar, as a distraction. But he's going to have to get involved at some point, I think. And obviously, if something happens to his son, D-Mac, that could definitely happen as well. So we have to wait and see. But we're not going to see that bar by the end of this season. Remember the bar now, because it will be gone by the end of this season. That's what my prediction is.
Wait, am I the only one that wants JP to be happy?
I want him to be happy, but there's no happiness in Power. You can't be happy.
Yeah, because it will go against the narrative that anytime somebody gets around Tommy, something bad happens. So something bad is going to happen, unfortunately. It's just how it happens. But yeah, and because they made it such a point to say that Tommy does not want JP to get involved. So now, when something happens to that bar, now JP is going to have to get involved. He's going to want to be involved. So let's see what happens.
They're gonna do the Budweiser version of Tariq's coffee hustle. Get a little something extra with your Budweiser.
No frap, all cap.
That would be fun. But yeah, let's get to final thoughts. So Dana, you got any final thoughts? Anything we didn't mention? Any other theories, or just anything in closing?
No. Overall, you could. I had my issues, but overall, it was good. They did a lot of setting up of people being crossed, and basically a lot of angry people and wanting revenge and wanting their money. I think that they did a good job this time. Police and how they handle police in the Power universe can be a little wishy-washy. I kind of like how they're handling the situation so far. I do wonder, I can't remember the female cop's name, but remember she has the backstory with opening up an investigation on the police force for, it was like a racial discrimination, and also how they was treating people. in Chicago. So I wonder, we all know that that played into her not being able to get the task force originally. I wonder now with her being able to get the task force, are we going to have people who are able to, what were cops who are willing to help her? Or was again that just a sentence in a throwaway sentence? I wonder if that is something that's going to come back to haunt her. So I found that to be interesting. I also found it, the Serbs and how everything was set up to be interesting as well. I like that. Just overall, I think that, Claudia at this moment she's the most person to have a revenge where she didn't have to have a monologue, but you knew she was going to get her revenge back. I kind of again wish that's how they handled the brother, Vic, but I'm really interested in what's going on with her. Also, now that Dahlia's dead, what happens then? Like, did just everyone make their own version of Dahlia, and that was it? Are we no longer revisiting that? Can they tweak maybe the situation? We do know that the girl is dead, but yeah, JP kind of figured out how it worked. So I'm just wondering, is that a completely deaded issue? Because that seemed to be the best thing that they had going for them in the previous season. So I wonder, how that's going to play out. And then, Brendan Doyle, don't sleep with, pun intended, don't sleep on Brendan Doyle because he could run back and end up being, I don't even know if you can argue if he's a snitch because at the same time he was being used. It was like a quid pro quo situation. So I wonder if he's going to go run back to his people and explain, what could happen with that situation. I wonder how he's going to come into play with this. But overall, I just think that it was a very interesting episode. I now have a new word for pancake. Never thought of using that terminology before, but pancake it is.
Yeah. So yeah, good thoughts there, as always. So Rich, do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, I thought it was an entertaining episode. By the way, Brandon Doyle will get killed at some point. Come on now. This is a secondary character that I expect to get taken out at some point. It's just a matter of who is it going to be. So stay tuned. But no, I thought it was a good episode. It was entertaining. There's enough that's happening now where I'm very intrigued to see what happens next week. And again, unlike the first season of Force, I was very disappointed in the first season of Force. This is still better. It may have a few issues here and there, but overall, I still want to see what happens. So they're doing something right, I think. But yeah, looking forward to talking about the next episode, and very curious to hear what everybody has to say. Shout out to everybody that left comments on the previous episode, and yeah, I look forward to hearing your thoughts about this episode as well.
Yeah, indeed. Looking forward to the comments on this one for sure. Yeah, I don't have any final thoughts, but we could also give some shout outs. And yeah, I'll go first with that. So yeah, big shout outs to the people who returned in the comments, Jeremiah, Rainy J. I also want to shout out Just Being Honest and SJ Smith. They had great comments on the last episode. So big shouts to them. I also want to give a shout out to Dimitri/DJ. Yeah, we talk about power quite a lot. So big shouts to him. We're also working on a writing project. And also I want to shout out Rish from the channel Movie Bot too. So yeah, big shouts to him. I haven't talked to him a whole lot, but we're working on some stuff. So big shouts to him. But yeah, how about you, Dana? Got any shout outs?
No, once again, shout out to everyone who listens, especially to me, Ramble. Thank you so much again for the support. There will be interviews, obviously not with the cast, obviously not with the writers, pay the writers and your actors fairly. But we do have directors. We have three directors from the Power Force that will be uploaded soon. So we have that going on, and that should be a lot of fun. They will talk about their episodes spoiler free, obviously, because we have some stuff that happens in 10, some in 4, things maybe that already happened in 1. But we do have them talking about their episodes, the overall theme. One of the things is like, Tommy and how, he's such a dark character. How do they bring levity to him, balancing that dark and that lightness to him? So we talk about that, and we do talk a little bit about the previous episode and how this showrunner is different from last season's showrunner. So stay tuned for that. That will be up shortly. So just again, thank you to everyone who watches or listens to us.
Oh, I can't wait for that. I want to see that. Yeah, so definitely look out for those interviews and head over to the entertainment channel also, because Dana's always hard at work over there, even through the strikes and everything. So
well,
yeah, definitely. Go ahead. You're muted.
On that side, we do have an interview with Antoine Fuqua, who just did Equalizer 3. So we're talking about Equalizer 3, working with Denzel. Obviously, we don't have Denzel because strikes, but we have Antoine Fuqua. That should be a lot of fun. We'll have a lot of more interviews with the directors of other shows that's coming up, and there's a lot more movies that's coming out very soon, and we'll have that with the creators as well. So that should be pretty fun.
I'm sure it will be a blast, I'm sure. But Rich, how about you? Any shout outs?
Yeah, I'll give a shout out to everybody that's been leaving comments. Of course, always great to see Jeremiah and Rainy J. Also want to give a shout out to NBA Old Boy, because he did make a comment that he said that Maria reminds him of Angela Valdez. And that I did have a comment that I left in return to that. Maybe you will see a future discussion on that, because she is similar to Angela Valdez, but she has not broken the rules yet to save Tommy, unlike what Angela did to try to save Ghost. So once she does that, then I think you can make that comment and say, yeah, that's another Angela Valdez. But we'll see what happens, because, again, that character is probably not going to survive this season. But, hey, stay tuned. But, yeah, shout out to everybody leaving comments. Like to see all of your conversations on the show. And we look forward to recapping the next episode next week.
Yeah, shouts to NBA Old Boy. He has some pretty funny comments sometimes. So. Yeah. But yeah, that is it for this week. We will be back next week to recap episode 3. So, look out for us then. Until then, have a great week. Enjoy yourselves and look after yourselves. Peace.